You asked, and we answered. So don the gloves and ring the bell, because it's time for another round of You Ask, and We Answer. That's right, it's Community Q&A Part 6. So join me, Alex Partridge,
and me, Max Pears,
as we step into the ring on this week's episode of The Level Design Lobby. Hello Game Gurus and welcome. You're listening to the podcast dedicated to all things game and level design. So wherever you are in the world, morning, noon or night, we hope you are well, making and playing the games that you love. So it's 2019. 2018 is a long and distant memory. We've eaten way too much turkey over the holidays, and it's a time of year when people turn over new leaves and try something new. Some people take up a new hobby. Some people go to the gym. Here at LDL, we thought we'd try switching up the format a little bit. So many long-time listeners and community members will know who I am. And to them, I say, hello, it's been a heck of a while. But for those of you who are new here, either on your game dev journey or just here at Level Design Lobby, I'd like to start by wishing you a big welcome and to introduce myself. I'm Alex, I'm the associate producer here at Level Design Lobby, and this is my first time ever in the driving seat of an episode of LDL. Is this a sign of things to come? Who knows? But if this is something you enjoy or would like to hear more of, please do let us know. Equally, if you didn't like it so much and want me to get back behind the curtain, so to speak, then please also tell us, because we'd love to hear what you think. Details of how you can do that will be at the end of the show. But if you're sitting there thinking, but Alex, what am I going to do without my smooth jazz? How am I ever going to survive without my weekly dose of smooth jazz? To you, I say, do not worry, because it's still here. Here he is in the passenger seat. You know him, you love him, the ever-handsome, ever-charming Max Pears. Max, how are you doing?
Thank you very much, mate. It's a very nice intro. I don't feel so handsome because, as you mentioned earlier, the turkey has definitely been taking a bit too much and has now made rest in my gut. So,
you and me both, mate. Yeah, you and me both.
It's a great time period for sure, but one that affects the scales too much, that's for sure.
Absolutely. I didn't dare look, I must confess. So on the subject of New Year's resolutions, have you got any for the coming year, Max? Bit of a curveball question before we get started.
Yeah, I'm going to let you down massively here. No, not really, mate. I don't really like or believe in New Year's resolutions. The new year doesn't change who you are. It's on you to make that permanent change, and it doesn't come every year, or that it's a constant, self-strive and deep looking within oneself to find out what you want to improve upon. So there's things that I want to improve upon and get better at, but none set as New Year's resolutions. I want to improve on my communication skills. I want to improve on certain things I do at work, and also improve on certain things we do here at the Level Design Lobby. But as for New Year's resolutions, no, man, there's nothing I've set up, so I do apologize.
That's fair enough.
Yeah, what about yourself?
When I think of New Year's resolutions, I try not to think of them in the sense of, doing X activity or doing, in terms of absolutes. Like, a lot of people will say, oh, I'm going to go to the gym. Mm-hmm. I'm going to, go on a diet, or I'm going to try and do X thing 5 times a week and then fail at it miserably, like more or less instantly after they start it. And that's not what I'm in for. As you said, resolutions should be about building on something, should be about moving forward. And I've been sort of wrestling with this quite a lot over the past couple of years in terms of building up my confidence and how I sort of put myself out into the wider world. And Level Design Lobby, ironically, was part of that last year in my strategy. So for this year, I'm improving on that, or I'm building on what I did last year by sort of trying to stick to a simple mantra. And the mantra I'm going for is to stop waiting for the right time to do things and just do it. And it's not a big thing. It's not about doing a big activity. It's just a simple switch in mentality, trying to shift your thoughts just a little bit, nudge them in the right direction, just to, better yourself. So, yeah, that's what I thought I'd do.
Yeah, man, I agree. There's a great quote. It comes from a movie I didn't think I would think was the inspiring one, because it's the action-packed Equalizer with Denzel Washington. But he has a great line which says, "It's about progress, not perfection," and that's I prefer that, because, like I said, a lot of people go to the gym to start off with, and I've been a gym goer for a long time, and I've seen a lot of people come in and do that New Year gym stuff and drop out quick. But you're gonna put on weight certain times of the year. You're gonna lose weight. You're gonna look good. You're gonna look bad. Like I said, it's about, and don't let that stop you. It's about progress, not perfection, and that's okay.
Well, you guys came here for level design tips, and you've got an extra philosophical discussion. Can't say we don't ever give you anything.
Constantly delivering.
Exactly. So how about some questions, my man?
Yep, sounds good.
Excellent. So, our first question this week comes from Anya Schiffer.
Mm-hmm.
And they have asked, is there a difference between composition and framing?
Yes, this is a really interesting one. This is a great question, and it's one that people, these terms get thrown around quite a bit, and it's something that's not always expanded upon. So it's something that, I'm glad has been asked, and we'll try answer the best we can with this one. So from what myself and Alex have found is that one of the big differences is that framing is, for example, from the player's point of view of the game's world that you see it from. Imagine that you are putting it in a frame. The easiest example to put is that either of a door frame or a window frame in which the player is seeing a certain view from this. With this, that you want to keep in mind that this is mostly used with the intention of showing the player where they need to go, either highlighting like a landmark or a direction, helping them understand an area. It doesn't have to be with a door frame or a window frame. You can make a frame out of anything, a number of pipes, the way that walls come in, leading it. It can be used in many ways. So that's the main key for framing there within it. It is framing the environment that the player is going to see. And again, that's normally used to show where, like something like an important point where you should be going, or something that maybe you as the player should be interacting with. Composition, though, however, is that of the arrangement of items within your level. And think of it more as it being something that you are trying to, maybe, for example, highlight a certain route for the players. So the composition might be angling certain props to lead the player's eye towards that door, having certain lights in there. These sort of things that guide the player's eye, because that's not necessarily in a frame, because players are going to be within this level and looking at it from many different ways that you might not expect. So by having composition of the items or props, should we say, in the level to highlight certain things. Leading lines tends to be a great technique used in composition, and that's a big one for sure. And I'm going to do a shameless plug here, Alex, quickly. We do have a great talk. I'm really biased when I say great because it was me who did it, and I don't mean it to be so narcissistic. But I've done a talk on leading lines, which helps, again, break down some of the things with composition and how we can use that. And that is actually a part of the silver perk in the Patreon. So if you want to know more about that, there is a talk available. But as I said, framing is more how you use items to create a frame to highlight a certain way, object, or something. And the composition is using the props to navigate the player within that space, in full kind of game view, if you will. I moved my hands so much with that, and no one saw it. I don't know why. I've never
lost on them. It's lost on them.
I never moved my hands so much in my life.
So when we talk about composition and framing in the context of level design, what we're actually doing is we're borrowing terms that actually most likely originate from the art world, from the days of like oil paintings and landscapes that were then later applied to photography, film, television, and now video games. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say that these are concepts that are exclusive to the things I've just mentioned, because the truth is these are things that are applied to any type of visual medium, be it things like advertising, architecture, interior design, all sorts. Visual language is everywhere in our day-to-day lives, and it's most often subconscious. We don't realize we are seeing it. We don't realize we're using it, but you'd notice if we didn't, as it has the ability to make everything we see and experience more appealing and interesting to our weird primate brains. So in basic terms, framing is the position or movement of a camera to create a frame. If I were a photographer taking a picture of a landscape, the framing would be where I choose to stand with my camera and what direction I point it in. Whether I crouch down to get a lower angle or stand on something to get a higher one. Whether I zoom, pan, tilt, or rotate the camera. That's framing. And then composition, in the context of art and photography and film, is how you position those elements within your frame. As Max said, in the context of level design, it's all about creating those frames and leading the player's eye, and it is identical in art and photography. So even though they are two distinctly separate practices in relation to art, photography, and games, they are actually intrinsically linked with one another and both mutually inform and enhance one another to create more visual interest. So there really is a difference, but not really.
Yeah,
it's kind of a convoluted one.
Yeah, no, I just want to say as well, like, because just building on a point you said about framing in terms of in photography and art, because what you said is like right, and that's why I said when I said like it's about you framing is you have to build a frame in games in level design, because the fact that as you've said there, you're correct, like everything you said there is because they've automatically got a frame, like that, whether it be photography or a piece of art or sometimes even film or TV, they are controlling what you see, so they control that frame. What is that border? So for level design, we have to make that frame when it comes to actually framing. I'm not saying you need a whole box to create a rectangle, but yeah, that's what I think is also an interesting point from what you've said is like, just a small detail is that as level design, we have to actually make the frame because you're in that world. So that's always an interesting one.
You could say the same thing about the not just frames within our levels, but also the frame through which the player sees the entirety of the game world. So the usage of the player's camera, be it through a first-person or third-person player camera or a cinematic camera, that also controls and influences how the player sees your world. So using that as just another tool in your arsenal and consideration in your design will also help and influence and lead players in how they move and navigate through your world, and also how they feel and experience it. So very, very powerful tool, very, very subtle.
Yep.
Excellent. So next question, mate.
Awesome, yep.
Okay, so next one comes from Zornag, and they have asked, do you think level design can be used to help build player communities in multiplayer games?
This, I want to say, like, this is a really interesting question for me personally, solely because I've never worked on a multiplayer game, and I'm not the biggest social player, as much as I tear it up on Splatoon 2, and by that I mean bully children, which isn't
You
cool.
are a terrible person.
Someone's going to take that soundbite and use that against me, 100%, calling it
It's
now.
gonna be me.
Yeah, so, but bully children, but no, this is a really interesting one, and I say yes, it can be. And this comes from my experience as someone who's looked at communities or been part of communities here. It's not actually me who's built one. So, like, I just want to say my perspective on this, just so you get my understanding. If I ever do make a multiplayer map, I'll try to let you know. But this just comes from a viewer and a player's understanding. Yes, I do. I think these are, well, if you look, for example, it can be used in different ways. The first example is like the reveal. Maps and stages are some of the most like exciting points for a game that, should we say, a live game, a game that's constantly being updated, as most multiplayer games are, because it's something that excites people. Take that in Overwatch, or maybe something like Smash Brothers, even Splatoon 2. when a new map comes in, people are excited by this. It's new content, and they're excited because it's a new challenge. So I think that's one way that it brings communities together, is the hype of this, and then it expands into understanding the level, people sharing ways to figure it out. And it also helps players get an advantage, and that's how this then goes into the next point of it builds community because people want to grow and get better as players in multiplayer games. And that's what you see from watching pro players, is they understand the maps really, really well. So you can sit there and watch these pro players to help you go, oh, there was that route there that I never even thought of doing. And it's things like that which help. So I think level design can be, as I said, used either for a new content drop or as a case study to help you get better as a player. I think it can help build communities like this as well. I think that's some of the biggest stuff for it. In my opinion, there might be other ways, but there's some of the big ones that I've seen.
So we've talked a bit there about multiplayer PvP type games, but what would you say in relation to a more RPG type multiplayer game? How would you think level design could work in that context?
Do you have an example of game? Do you mean something like World of Warcraft?
World of Warcraft, maybe something like, I don't know, Fallout 76. That's a fairly recent example of sort of online multiplayer RPG type.
Well, I'll give an example as well from Division, because that was an open world.
Division.
Yeah, so okay, I guess I have worked in a multiplayer game. I've lied to you all. So I take that back. I've not worked in a competitive multiplayer game. So yes, this works in different ways. It's still a discussion about the map, but it comes from something like discovering something that other players might not have. A big example was an area my friend worked on, two of my friends, Barnaby Zola and Gareth O'Neill. They worked on this kind of piano restaurant bar up in, I want to say, the last kind of district or second to last district in the game. And it worked out really well. Someone came across to it and they did a whole massive thing on Reddit where basically saying, there's a lot of combat in here, but we really loved the fact that, we got to see these peaceful areas as well, showing what life was like before the outbreak struck. So little things like that to build communities, because then people see that online and try find it. There's other things where people, because we were based in New York, people actually took, who lived in New York, took pictures of areas and then screenshots of the game and compared them to see how obviously realistic they were. Obviously they were. We did a lot of research on that, and the team did a fantastic job. So I think there's stuff like that there, discovering either Easter eggs or something different, having a story about these areas, because an example of World of Warcraft, they had that massive change in Catalyst where, this area that you thought you once knew has now changed, so it gives now a replay value to this. So it's still a conversation point and in forms of interpretation as well, because it's also a point, and people don't keep forgetting this, because people talk about narrative all the time, and they're talking about, I love the story and I want the story. But the level is the background for your story. That's why no one talks about it in story, because unless it's level design doesn't always get, and a lot of other disciplines have the same thing as well. But you tend to find you've made a good level if no one talks about it sometimes. Not always, but sometimes, because people are so engrossed in it. It plays smoothly, they're really enjoying it. And that's what you can find here, is the fact that they're making their own story within these levels, within these worlds, in this more friendly kind of context, And there could be stuff, we had the Dark Zone where, it becomes a talking point because someone gets a really interesting kill or there's some crazy loot here. So that becomes a topic of discussion as well. So yeah, I think it's a strong point for building communities, but I don't think people will talk about it as specifically level design. But those are ways, I think, that help build communities from this. But you have to keep, in my opinion, with a live game, you have to make sure that you keep making updates. I don't mean massive changes to the area, but changing it sometimes to make it feel like that world is being lived in. World of Warcraft did an amazing job with that, and stuff like that can help with it. So yeah.
Awesome.
Cheers, dude. And thank you for the great questions again, guys.
Next question comes from Oliver Walker, and they have asked, how do you collaborate with artists on levels?
So give a bit more of context, because Oliver messaged me about this one, and what he's meaning is sometimes, because we work so closely with environment art, we can sometimes butt heads, because obviously, we're trying to use that space for gameplay, and obviously the artists are trying to make sure that it obviously looks realistic and it's beautiful, and that as well. We're all working on the same game, but sometimes we're just working on different elements. So I really want to talk about this in terms of, finding that middle ground. And I think that's a really cool one to figure out. And it is a challenge as well. You're not going to do this right away. And it's about making sure that you have a good relationship with your artist for the first point. If you introduce yourself and being like, and we're going to do everything my way, it's probably not going to have a great, it's not a great way to start things. So it's about firstly getting to know your artist a bit. Chat with them about different things, not necessarily about the project. You can talk about other games, hobbies they have, see if you have hobbies in common, just to get to know one another. Because I think once you have a friendly basis, it becomes a talking point much better. And make sure when you are having these debates with them, I think it's important to always set a ground rule of saying like, we're doing this for the best for the game. You're not doing it for your ego, they're not doing it for their ego. We're trying to make the best product. A big thing that I always have with my environment artists, and I set this kind of as a ground rule, I tend it more to be, and this is subject to change, it's just something I think that's always fun, just so people know. If there is no gameplay, it's more of a downbeat area, I do not have the problem with the artist changing, as long as the layout stays roughly the same, the outer shell, or if they are going to change the layout, we talk about it first. Go to town. I think it's important to let them let their creativity run free, making sure that they have that canvas where they can have a lot of fun. But if it is in a heavily gameplay area, I'm kind of a bit strict. I'm like, okay guys, like this one you can't touch as much because I need it to play for this. And that's always big. And then the next step, once this is talked about, is I will do my block out, and I will make sure you gather references as well. So then when you're doing your block out, you can show them the references saying, look, this is what I'm thinking, this is where we are down the line, and they can comment because they might like, oh, okay, this is cool, but I think you should look at this reference. So now they feel involved as well. And that's an important thing, is making sure everyone feels involved. Because yes, it may be your level design, but lots of people work on their level. So make sure they feel involved within that. From that there, keep doing your block out. Just talk to them, show them stuff, ask for feedback. That's important. So again, they feel like they're involved from it. And then once you've got that first kind of block out done, walk them through it. Mistake I made, and a lot of mistakes I see other level designers make, is that they just pass the level on to the artist. And do you know what, from my experience, is artists, when they first get it, don't tend to play it. They just jump in and start making it pretty, which is not a bad thing, but you can see already how communication can break down and they might miss something. And the way they view the editor may be different to you. So stuff like spawn points, right? I think that's the wrong thing to say, but sometimes you might have that turned on as a level designer because it's important for you to understand where your enemies are coming from. They might not have that icon switched on in their version of the editor because they don't need to see that on their day-to-day basis. So they might cover that up by mistake, and that's fine. But what's important to do is play through it with them. So either give them the controller, or you just walk through and stop, let them ask questions, because they're going to ask, okay, can I make changes to this? Or how does this work? And that's great, because now they see how everything works and they can put it together. So make sure you do walk through level with them once your first pass is complete, so they can understand which of those, as I just said, the ground rules there. So they understand which spaces are the ground rules. There's some times where, like I said, there's not much gameplay from my perspective, and they go off and do some amazing stuff, which is great. They make something really badass. And make sure you keep talking, because then they're going to ask for you for your opinion. Okay, I've made my first pass. and you're like, okay, this works, but this might not work because of X, Y, and Z. And it's just about having a constant communication with them. It's never, and you should never make it feel like this, there is always a running joke of it's us versus them, but make sure that is a joke. As soon as you start to think that, that is a problem. The overall message here is keep them in the loop, and like I said, that ground rule thing, I don't say it as in like, okay, this is how it's going to go. This is just a thing that I say, okay, like, if there's not much gameplay, man, you go to town, that's fine, but, like, you need to respect when it's gameplay here. So everyone already feels that they've got a bid in now. They've got their section, I've got my section, and then when we start working on it and making sure they're kept in the loop, you're communicating, and the feedback is constantly given, and that tends to help. That's the best way that I've found it. So get to know them, talk with them, make sure that you provide references for them as well, because if you don't provide them references, that can instantly lead to some problems. So provide references, talk to them while you're blocking it out, walk them through once the block out is done, and that tends to help with working with your artists on your levels.
If you love game and level design as much as we do, then why not consider supporting Level Design Lobby on Patreon? Patreon is a crowdfunding platform that allows people to directly fund the content and creators that they love. From as little as $1 per month, you can help support us in our mission to unite and teach people across the world about the wonderful and unique field of game and level design, and get some great reward perks in return, such as access to the Level Design Lobby community Discord, bi-monthly webinars, level design weekends, and much more. So head on over to patreon.com/Level Design Lobby for more information and to pledge your support today. Finally, we'd just like to say a massive thank you to all our current backers. It's thanks to the generous support of people like you that we are able to grow and can continue to bring you awesome, new and exciting content. So thank you. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. Excellent. So the next question comes from OVDU Mantok. I really hope I've said that right. Massive apologies if I haven't, but they have asked, how much paper design do we need to do? Do you think sketching on paper top-down maps will help you better understand the shapes and relations between shapes?
So there is no specific answer on how much, or like there is no specific answer, like a specific number that gives you the correct answer of how much paper design do we need to do? Like, that is completely up to you and your design like philosophies and things. And I know that sounds corny and cheesy and it's not always the answer people are looking for, but like it's the truth. People work in different ways. I have people that spend ages sketching. I know companies, I think like stuff like Naughty Dog, where they don't even do paper designs, they just jump in and block something out straight away. But I think paper designs are very helpful. I think it's great because you obviously have an image in your head, but if you can quickly sketch that out, you can instantly keep looking to that as you're blocking out, It does help you understand the relationship between the shapes, because sometimes you're like, oh, well, hold on. There's too many, like, for example, large rooms, and, the buildings aren't connected like that. There is always, like, connectors such as corridors as well. So I think that like I said, sadly, there is no specific number on how much paper designs you have to do. It's figuring out what's your style of design. Sometimes, like, there was times where I wasn't doing any paper design. I was just quickly jumping into doing some blockouts, which helps me move faster. And there's other times where I stop and do multiple paper designs, and that's really helped me. It's about, and people need to remember this as well, your paper design is not your final product, because what you might do on paper might not work and might not even look or feel right when it actually gets into an editor. So remember that it is a starting point for your designs, and keep that in mind. I think it helps you understand what you're trying to go for, and you can ask for feedback quicker as well. You can be like, okay, hey mate, does this look okay to you? Do you think this will work for this scenario? And then they can be like, okay, no, but here's what you should try instead. And at the end of the day, pictures speak 1,000 words, or so the age-old adage goes. So it's a helpful thing. So just do as much or as little as you think to help you get started. I think that's one to go from there. So yeah, sorry there's not a particular number, but it's down to you and your design style. So really, and also the level, like have some fun with that. Really enjoy that.
I personally think paper design is a great way to get you started, especially if you're struggling. One of the best steps you can make if you feel like you can't move forward, I feel, is just getting something down on paper. Because there's nothing more daunting than a blank editor screen or a blank piece of paper. Getting over that first hurdle is always the hardest. And as Max said, your paper designs are not your final designs. You can scrunch them up, throw them in the bin, or you can put them up on the wall as the best example of that you have so far of what you're trying to achieve. But it's getting that idea down and getting it into some form that is not only understandable by you, but anyone else you may be working with, I think is the key part. And as Max said, some people draw nothing on paper, some people draw 90% of their work on paper before shifting to an editor. It's whatever works for you and whatever works best for your process. Because everyone is different, everyone works in their own way. What works for some people doesn't work for others. And as much as it isn't a definitive answer on the subject, and it's probably not the definitive answer you were hoping for, it's the truth. We all work in different ways, and you've just got to find what works the best for you.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, mate. So, yeah, we hope that that's helped. And sorry again, there's no proper definitive one.
So, next one comes from Brad Butcher, community veteran.
Yeah.
And he has asked, how do you go about designing the downbeats of a level? How do you go about figuring out the length of these sections to make sure it's not too long, boring, etc.?
Okay, so first with the length, you generally, when you're having a level and talking about it, you'll kind of have a rough estimation given to you because someone will have decided, for example, main missions might be, for example, we're talking about 40 minutes long, side missions 20, and then I don't know, maybe if you're making an open world game, like random encounters, 2 minutes long. So you'll have an idea of your kind of time frame. And then once you've done that, you'll tend to have a graph, a beats graph, describing, you plotting out the beats in this, big boss battle, cutscene, finding, secret serum puzzle, and you'll have this plotted out so you kind of can see what are the big moments within the level, and there's many different ways that you can do this. Generally we use something, and Ubisoft uses this a lot, called rational level design. We can talk about that another time, but it's a great technique to help break down the beats to understand that level. And with that, what you can do from there is then you'll see, like I said, which ones are the more exhilarating beats and which ones are the lesser ones. And from that, you'll then start to figure out where to go in between them and how many there is. And a lot of time, downbeats tend to be quite traversal driven. Not always, but a lot of the time. And this was an example that Brad actually gave with us, was a clip from Last of Us where you're just running across the motorway. With feel of this, with the length as well, sometimes that just comes down to feel from constant iterations and reviews. It might be too short, it might be too long, but a downbeat, you should definitely let the player catch their breath. I've seen it with people's work where, okay, we've just come to a downbeat, but now we've seen something, and it doesn't have to necessarily be combat that counts as an exciting beat, but seeing something new or something like that can also be a new way to excite players. So with traversal, look at the options that you have for it. For example, The Last of Us, the example that he gave us, you can climb. So for some of the path, you might, walk and then climb on something. So it's breaking up your traversal with different sorts of variation that you have. And then from that, you can obviously make sure that you don't just walk in a straight line. That is the quickest way to bore someone. If you are going to, have these traverse layers, make sure there's kind of zigging and zagging. And these sort of things can help with it. So, you'll get your information. And then, like I said, if it is traversal, which most of the time it is, think about in ways that you can use different ways to traverse. And also make sure it's never a straight line. but it can't be something like 2 seconds. You know, like, you've really got to make sure that the player has that time to, because normally a downbeat is followed by something, such as a big action sequence, or maybe it's something revealed in the story. You want to make sure that the player is like either taking that information in, if it was from something that the story is revealed. Like, for example, Darth Vader is your father. You need those moments where people take that in. And then if it is from a big combat encounter, you need something where they can just breathe and not feel rushed again, that took a lot out of them. So yeah, that's generally how they're designed, and things to keep in mind when you are designing these beats.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it's very easy to underestimate the importance of downbeats, as you've clearly and very well explained there, Max. Having the player go at 100% of the time is just not a viable option in terms of gameplay. That can become equally as boring as having nothing happening at all. So just be sure that for every upbeat that you do have in your game, you do have a downbeat, just to keep the action varied. And by having those down moments, you are enhancing those high moments and making them even greater. So absolutely do not be afraid to use them. And a lot of it, as Max has also said, is down to sort of instinct and the context of the gameplay and the level that you are trying to achieve. So again, not an exact science like the previous question. It's a lot of intuition and just going with what feels right, but definitely do not underestimate the importance of those downbeats.
And I just want to add something, because I think we get a lot of these questions, and I've had it where people have kind of, not here, but at conferences where I've given a talk and it's been more of like an open-ended answer, where people get annoyed at this, right? And I think this is a really important lesson to take away from this, is you playing your work is super important. Testing your work and iterating on it is something that you cannot get away from. It is something that needs to be done. And we were talking about this off air. We wish there was a exact science or number to come with this, but it's not, because each game is very different. And I think that's an important thing, is make sure that you're testing your stuff, guys and girls, because you need to make sure that it feels right. And the only way you're going to do that is through playing. And sometimes that means cutting work, and it is a shame. One of the school projects that me and Alex did together back in our second year of university, we worked on, I think it was we had to work on this building, and there was like 3 floors or something. And me and Alex worked...
it was a school, wasn't it?
Yeah. And we worked on the kind of middle section. And one of the things that I did wrong was, because like you said, it's a school, so we had all these separate rooms. I had like nearly a puzzle or encounter in nearly every single room, right? And it wasn't until my mate came around later, and he was leading the project at the time. He said, "You're going to have to cut some of this stuff." And I was like, "But why? They're really cool." He's like, "I'm not disagreeing with you." He says, "You need to pick, though, which ones you want, because these downbeats are important." So those downbeats are important, but it wouldn't have happened without me and him playing together. And that's what made our level better, because we played it and realized, okay, I've taken it too far. And there's nothing wrong with going too far or too short. Because as long as you play it, you will find that sweet spot later. But yeah, sometimes in game dev, guys, there isn't that specific answer, but make sure that you are testing your stuff.
I always wondered how that swimming pool puzzle worked.
Oh man, I forgot. That's the one I forgot about, because that's what we got a mark down on. So yeah,
God, you could tell we were novices.
Yeah, for sure, man. And that's again.
But you don't progress without learning or without doing.
100%.
So you have to make the mistakes in order to learn from them. And I think it's safe to say that we all learned a lot that year.
No, for sure. For sure.
Excellent. So, my man.
Hello.
The last question
Yeah.
of this Q&A episode comes from another community veteran, Dermot Malone.
What a Malone!
And he has asked, what do you make of recreating existing levels in blockout form as a study in a portfolio? It's not your own work, but can it still demonstrate understanding?
So this is a really interesting one, and what's really cool is actually someone who just asked a question. I don't know if he wants me to say too much, so I don't want to say it, but Mr. Mantok, he actually, that's one of the things that helped him with his work was did the great article that got released around and got some really good traction on when he kind of recreated the level from the E3 trailer of Last of Us 2. Now, obviously, it's slightly different because, none of us actually got to play that. He did that solely from a video, and I thought that was really cool. But say if you're doing a exact replica for a blockout, I think it's interesting for a study, but if you do obviously a nice article alongside it, that's great. But I want to see what you've learned applied to a level that you have done. This is my opinion. There might be people that disagree. This is just my opinion. I want to state that as well. So I don't mind. I like people doing it. I think it's cool that they are taking the time to do this. And like I said earlier, Mr. Mantok did an amazing job with his work. But I think one of the things that made his work stand out was because none of us had played Last of Us 2, or had not yet at the time of this recording. And he was able to put that together because he'd taken apart this video. But if you're doing something we've all played, okay, but we've all played that, in its final form, while you might just be able to just do a block out. So again, I don't mind it, but I want to see what you've actually learned from it applied to your own level. That's what I think's more important, is you can do it, have a nice piece written alongside it, but then show us what you have learned from it, like the actual knowledge you've gained applied to a level. I think that's the most important. If you're going to do it like that, that's what I think you should bring along with it. But I think it's always better to do a level that you've created. And when you're doing it, and most from taking part in Level Design Weekend, for those who support on the Patreon, is it's great to make a level and you can make that within an already established universe, maybe like Last of Us. The last one we all did together was God of War. That's fine, but I think that's better showcase for your portfolio than a remake. In my opinion, someone might disagree on that, but that's my thoughts anyway.
Okay, everyone, that's the end of this episode of Q&A. Thank you very much for everyone who's submitted questions to us today. We really appreciate it, and we really hope that you like the answers we've given. If you do have any more questions, please do feel free to get in touch, as we really do love answering them and love engaging with the community. And speaking of engagement, if you want to get in touch with either myself or Max, you can do via Twitter. I am at AlexMPartridge, and Max is at MaxPairs, or feel free to email us at leveldesignlobby@gmail.com. And for those of you looking to get more out of Level Design Lobby, please do consider checking out our Patreon, the info for which you can find at patreon.com/leveldesignlobby, a link to which will be posted in the description. Thank you all very much for listening, and we'll catch you all next time.
See ya.